I have pleasure in opening the annual general meeting 11th of December 2024 at 7 p.m. and welcome all those in attendance. The City of Vincent would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and pay our respects to elders past and present, acknowledging that the City of Vincent has a role in working towards reconciliation and justice for First Nations people. So I'm just going to go over the role of the meeting today. So this is not a decision-making meeting. As such, matters may be tabled this evening, but council members will not be required to vote. I am the presiding member. Hello, my name is Alison Simon and I am the Mayor of the City of Vincent. And for the purpose of, and so I am presiding for the purpose of chairing the meeting. However, myself and the council members are present in our capacity, like you, as electors of the City of Vincent, and we may choose to vote on any motion tabled this evening. So should council members choose to vote on a motion, this doesn't imply that the council members support or oppose the motion. So in my role as the presiding member, I'm here to maintain the order of the proceedings and ensure respectful exchange of ideas and inclusive debate. And so I will run through the moving, seconding and voting procedures in more detail when we get to general business. So the first item that we will be dealing with tonight is item 3.1, which is the 2023-24 annual report, including the 2023-24 financial report. Can I please have a mover for that? So I've moved Councillor Wolfe. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Castle. Okay. I'm going to go through some of the annual report's key achievements, and I'll talk in my perspective first as the Mayor. So this is my first annual report as the Mayor of the City of Vincent, and it has been a really busy and interesting year, I have to say. I do really want to thank Emma Cole, who the outgoing Mayor. Because she covered part of that year, but also because she did a wonderful job with a handover and being very helpful, and for that I really do appreciate it. And also I congratulate her on her recent appointment of the chair of the WA Planning Commission. I understand that was announced a couple of days ago. So since I've been elected, there's been a lot of work that's been happening. So particularly a big focus has been on protecting and enhancing our trees, future planning for our town centres. We've been looking at upgrading some essential infrastructure. Obviously, we have our always popular community events, and also trying really hard to tackle some of the global issues such as climate change at the local level. So it was a challenge to only a few months in as Mayor to have to deal with the effects of polyphagous shot hole borer and the risk that presented to our tree canopy here in Vincent. Presented initially with dire predictions of how much tree canopy we were looking at losing, and particularly in iconic parks like Hyde Park. The council worked swiftly to try to work with DPIRD to see what we could do to mitigate the effects of shot hole borer, and also to see what we could do to address the loss of the tree canopy. I particularly want to thank the Hyde Park Reference Group, and I note that we've got members from that group who came together to help pull together a bit of a plan for Hyde Park and replanting efforts moving forward, and that was very helpful. But we continue to work with DPIRD, looking at trialling potential solutions to deal with polyphagous shot hole borer, and hoping to minimise the loss of tree canopy. We also have have increased the level of tree planting across Vincent, and this is something that we're going to be continuing to make an absolute priority. Just to let residents be aware that when I started as mayor, I had grand visions of wanting to plant thousands of trees pretty much straight away. And one of the challenges that I became aware of, because it's always good to come in with all these plans, but then you sort of hit the reality, is that the City of Vincent has limited groundwater allocations which are given to us, which also limits the number of new plantings that we can do in any given year. So I do want to have a shout out to the Parks team, who are doing a fabulous job of increasing, nevertheless, the number of trees that we're planting. But it is a challenge in a drying climate, and it is a necessity that we don't over-extract from the Gnangara Mound because of the increased pressure that puts on existing trees. But that is a limitation in terms of what is happening with the tree planting efforts. But nevertheless, we have increased it, and we will continue to increase it, and it's an absolute priority for us. We've also been working hard to ensure that our ageing facilities are accessible for the whole community and are used by a diverse range of groups. I have a particular interest, as does the council, in ensuring that we are increasing accessibility for people with disability and ensuring that there is wider accessibility for members of the community. So we've had major upgrades at Beatty Park Leisure Centre, Sullivan Logistics Stadium, better known as Leaderville Oval, Litter Stadium, the North Perth Bowling Club and Birdwood Square, and we have more planned for the coming year as well. So that included new accessible change rooms. We also had to undertake remediation works in Beatty Park due to tiles being delaminated. So we now are looking at constructing multi-sports change rooms at Litter Stadium as well as refurbishing change rooms as well. And we've been looking at toilets. Toilets are a big thing in the City of Vincent. So we've got toilets at the North Perth Bowling Club as well as at Birdwood Square. We're looking to put more toilets in other areas as well. We also have had to deal with the challenge of our ever-expanding local primary schools. And in particular, we entered into an arrangement with the WA Education Department to be able to access Birdwood Square for the purposes of school activities, which is fine because the students who go are residents, and so we want to make sure that's available. But that also has really highlighted the lack of long-term investment that has occurred with our inner city schools, and the fact that we have got more and more young people, more and more children who are coming into the City of Vincent, and we are going to need to see a marked increase of infrastructure investment in our local primary schools in order to be able to meet the demand. And I might add at this point, I think it's also beyond time for us to look at having a new primary school established, particularly over towards West Perth and in the Leaderville area. So there's a lot of work to be done in that. Focusing on safe and accessible footpaths is a bit of a priority, and we are going through the process of, there's obviously a lot of footpaths in Vincent, but we are needing to look at how we can upgrade, make sure that they are accessible, particularly for people with disability and older people, and so that has been a particular focus. And there's been a number of considered footpath maintenance projects. Part of the long-term goal that we're having to work towards is making sure that we have got responsible plans in place for our town centres with realistic visions and building heights and appropriate uses. We have experienced what it means to not have consistency in terms of community expectations around what's going to happen in our town centres and opportunities that developers can pursue at the moment under existing planning laws. So what we're doing is working hard to make sure that we've got those plans in place for our town centres in particular, so that there can hopefully be better certainty both for residents but also developers who want to come in, have an understanding of what the expectations are of those communities. There's also been a lot of work to try to focus a lot of developer activity, particularly over towards the North Claysbrook precinct as well. One of the big victories we had was an agreement by the WAPC to move on the 2 concrete batching plants in North Claysbrook. And as someone who's been very involved in that campaign for many years, I have to say we're absolutely thrilled at that outcome, and that will actually change that part of Vincent and enable us to look at high density living and ensure that we are able to meet our mandated targets for density and potentially exceed them by having affordable housing options over in an area of Perth which has otherwise been completely sterilised. Over in Leederville, we're progressing a major land transaction with Hesperia to develop the Avenue and the Frame Court car parks, and that will be a centrepiece for a future transit-oriented development, and we're quite excited about the opportunities that will offer. We also became the first local government in Australia to launch a Green Track Priority Assessment Service for residential development applications, and this initiative has already won awards, and it will have will have an impact on our sustainability footprint in residential areas, because it will actively promote, and it is already actively promoting, more energy efficient and environmentally friendly homes. And last night the council passed further extensions of our Green Track program to include incentives for people who are maintaining our mature trees on those sites as well. So I think that's a good example of how we're trying to ensure that we're tackling global issues such as climate change at a local level. Likewise, we've passed notices of motion on issues around the use of rodenticide, the need to have more infrastructure for e-vehicles and the like. And we're constantly looking at measures we can implement at the local level in order to improve our environmental sustainability. One of the things I adore about Vincent is we are very, very culturally diverse, with a mixture of people from multicultural and multi-faith backgrounds. And we are committed to not only celebrating significant dates across a range of cultural calendars, but also continuing to strengthen our relationships with key community groups. We have had a particular focus on wanting to encourage and develop our partnerships with various multicultural groups, and that's been fantastic. So we do, of course, continue to be a staunch ally of the LGBTIQ community. We were disappointed when Pride WA made the decision to remove Pride Fair Day from Hyde Park, but we simply couldn't compete with the sort of dollars that was being thrown at the event by the City of Perth. And so we have instead run the first Rainbow Community Picnic, which was really lovely, and also other events for Pride Fair Day. And we'll continue in our Vincent way to demonstrate our allyship. I've had a big focus on working with the sporting clubs in particular. Go the Mighty Royals, there you go, Alex. And I'm really pleased about, I have mentioned it already, but particularly the large investment of funds that is going into Leederville Oval, which hopefully puts us on the path to make it the premier Tier 2 oval in Western Australia. And I think we saw what's capable of happening down in that precinct when we saw the women's AFLW derby between the Dockers and the the Dockers and the Eagles, where we had thousands of people there. So that's been fantastic. So there is just so much that has been happening. It has been a very, very busy year, but it has been also incredibly rewarding. And so I'm keen to work hard to continue to deliver outcomes for Vincent. And I thank those people who have offered their support and who've been so practical in their thoughts and their advice as well. So thank you. David, would you like to give some comments?
Thanks, Mayor. I think you've covered that all very well, and we do have copies of the annual report outside the chamber, which members of the public are welcome to peruse, and it's also available online. And I think it has been one of our most productive years. Importantly, we had the local council elections last October and welcomed our new members of council, and that was a seamless transition, and we kept up our level of decision making throughout that period. The Mayor mentioned our major projects, which we were focusing on during that year, which included the underground power program, and we're very keen to start rolling out that first project next year. The Leederville car park redevelopment is one of our biggest ever projects undertaken at the City of Vincent. Continue to improve the infrastructure at Beatty Park Leisure Centre, which continues to break records in terms of membership and visitors. We are progressing the redevelopment of Robinson Park, the Banks Reserve Master Plan. We've installed the bridge and the Aboriginal Interpretation Node, Leederville Oval, the Mayor's mentioned, and the change rooms at Littus Stadium. We're very pleased to host the FIFA Women's World Cup at HBF Park and open a new skate space in Mount Hawthorn. And our 40-kilometre speed zone on local roads initiative has been very well received by residents. So the annual report goes into some more detail on those major projects, and for anyone looking for more detail on that. It also mentioned our planning reform initiatives, including Green Track. So the city, for members of the public who are not aware, the city is divided into 3 different directorates focusing on strategy and development, infrastructure, environment, and community and business services. The development and design team continued very productive year in terms of development assessment, and dealt with some very contentious large-scale developments in the City of Vincent, as well as continue to improve its processes. The urban design and strategic projects team continue to progress policies and strategies around trees on private land, a review of our local planning scheme and strategy, and we're reviewing our sustainable environment strategy, which is expiring this year, as well as implementing our public open space strategy. Also continued on a series of actions within the Accessible City strategy to improve transport and movement within the City of Vincent, and implemented key actions in our arts plan and our Thriving Places strategy, including a new series of business enhancement grants, which is sprucing up and improving the interface of some of our key businesses and restaurants and cafes and bars with the public realm, and that's been very successful. Our public health and built environment team continued to work on environmental health, building compliance, and building surveying services, as well as implementation of our smoke-free town centres initiative. Our corporate strategy and governance team oversaw the local government election process. We reviewed our governance framework following the election and updated our fraud and corruption plan. It's been a very productive year for our Infrastructure and Environment Directorate, including with our Rangers Services, who were named the WA Rangers Association Team of the Year, dealing with a huge amount of parking management issues and community safety issues and animal control issues, as well as implementing our Safer Vincent plan and working with our partners on issues around homelessness and antisocial behaviour. The engineering team rolled out the 40-kilometre speed limit initiative, as well as progressed a range of road, footpath and engineering and drainage projects. Our parks team were responsible for responding to the polyphagous shothole borer catastrophe that we thought it was at the start of the initial announcement, and have been working very closely with the state government to manage that, and we seem to have been able to stabilise our response so far. Continue to implement the greening plan, planting trees wherever we can possibly plant them, as well as having to deal with a severe heat wave over summer, and hopefully today isn't a precursor to another very hot, dry summer, because that was certainly a challenge for the parks team over the last summer. Waste and recycling continued to roll out best practice initiatives and service delivery around how we manage our waste, as well as we progressed our work towards a contract through the Mindarie Regional Council on a waste to energy to see if we can achieve the Council's target of zero waste to landfill by 2030. In community facilities, we mentioned the success of Beatty Park, as well as increasing the use of all our halls and reserves, and a series of very welcomed initiatives and events at the library. The Mayor mentioned a lot of the improvements to our city buildings, and members of the public would have seen that we're refurbing and recarpeting the downstairs. So we are ramping up our capital works program to make sure our assets are in a contemporary state and meeting the expectations of the community. Leederville Oval is a particular focus of that, while we're undertaking a multi-million-dollar project with funding support from the state government and the AFL and WA Football Commission to returf and install broadcast level lighting at that major facility. We saw a range of improvements and initiatives through our Community and Business Services Directorate, including our marketing and communications team, who have been reaching our community in lots of different ways, as well as organising a series of events and managing our event sponsorship. Our community development team have been working with all our different demographic groups and community groups throughout the year. And that includes a review and update to our Reconciliation Action Plan, and Council endorsed a new stretch wrap at the last meeting of Council last night. We also continue to implement the Access and Inclusion Plan, the Youth Action Plan, which we're starting to review and update this year as well. Our customer relations team have improved both its systems and policies around how we respond to customers, and we're getting very good customer feedback from a range of service improvements. I'll ask our Chief Financial Officer to comment on the state of the financial statements attached to the annual report shortly, but to note that we continue to have a huge focus on staff health and well-being, as well as attraction and retention of key staff during what has been a cost of living crisis and a key skill shortage across key skills that local governments need. And this is not just a City of Vincent issue, it's a national and WA state issue around key professions, which are very hard to source at the moment. And there's been a range of improvements in our information and communications technology, and that's been recognised by the Office of Auditor General through our performance audit, which has seen year-on-year improvement. And I might just ask the Chief Financial Officer just to comment briefly on the financial statements attached to the annual report. I'm going to share screen something.
Thank you, David. The 2024 financial year was another strong year for the city as we continue to build our long-term financial sustainability. Operating revenue for the city was $4.3 million higher than the prior year, with this strong result largely due to higher fees and charges, predominantly from Beatty Park, as attendance levels reached almost 1.3 million, representing a 9% increase on the prior year and a 45% increase on pre-COVID levels. Parking revenue continued to be strong, and higher interest rates and cash balances contributed favourably to higher interest earnings for the city. Inflationary cost pressures and a competitive labour market continue to be a challenge in FY24, with an overall increase in operational expenditure on the prior year of $5.9 million or 8.9%. Key drivers included depreciation, increased maintenance costs on our roads, footpaths, parks and a BD park, continued investments in our systems and cyber resilience, and the Leederville car park development. Overall, this contributed to a net result of $14.6 million for the year, an increase of $0.3 million on the prior year. The city continued to strengthen its balance sheet during 2024, with an overall increase in net assets of $8.6 million. This was largely due to a $4 million increase in cash assets from the prior year and a reduction in debt of $2.9 million, resulting in an improvement to the city's liquidity position. The city is also currently sitting above benchmark for all DLGSC local government financial index health indicators for FY24. This puts the city in a strong position to support borrowing for longer payback periods for Underground Power program, which will be rolled out in the coming years. We delivered just under $15 million worth of capital works projects for 2024, which was a 50% increase on the prior year, with our continued focus on renewal over new to address our ageing assets. The city invested $4.7 million in our roads, footpaths and drainage, $2.1 million at our parks and playgrounds, $3.3 million to our ageing buildings, and $1.9 million BD Park for pool tiling, change rooms and other infrastructure renewals. Net cash flow from operating activities was also strong at $15.2 million for the year, an increase of $1.6 million on the prior year. The OAG has issued the city with an unqualified audit report for 2024. There were no significant findings raised and an overall significant reduction in IS audit findings, as evidenced by the continued improvement to the city's processes and internal control environment. The city will continue to look to improve and further strengthen controls as supported by the internal audit program we have in place. Overall, this has been another strong year for the city, which we'll continue to build on into the future. Thank you.
Okay, so would the mover like to make any comments in relation to this?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make some brief comments, please. It is such a pleasure to receive the annual report. I want to firstly acknowledge the team that prepared this comprehensive report, which once again has been done to a really high standard. The report demonstrates the outstanding and varied work done by the city across all our service delivery areas in 2023-24. And I know that the team works incredibly hard and works long hours to achieve these outcomes. The city has made major progress on significant and exciting projects, which we've heard from the Mayor and from the CEO, so I won't repeat. And of course, now that we're in December, there have been further outcomes and achievements that I look forward to reading about in the next report. A lot of work has also been done behind the scenes to keep the city functioning and to keep it clean and safe. And that work isn't always mentioned in bright lights, but I know that we all really appreciate it. So to close, as part of council, I look forward to continuing to work with administration, with our community organisations, with our residents to deliver positive outcomes for the 38,000 people in our neighbourhood.
Councillor Castle, do you have anything you wish to say as a seconder?
Thank you, Mayor. Don't really have much to add to that. Councillor Wolf has summed it up very well. I just wanted to acknowledge the Mayor for her leadership through the second half of this particular reporting period. You have overseen a very smooth transition to a new council and we appreciate your leadership.
Thank you. Okay, so now this is open to any of the electors here. You've got a little green dot. If you'd like to come forward, you can ask any questions you want about the annual report and you can direct your questions to the CEO or to the CFO, or we've got our directors here if you need to ask anything. That's if you've got anything. Otherwise, we can just keep. Oh, Mari.
Good evening, everybody. Mari Slath, 89 Carr Street, West Perth. Just a few little matters I'd like just to draw attention to, and that is I never see any councillors ever coming down Carr Street where I live, because it's now become a traffic race lane and it's becoming really dangerous. No one's been killed yet. We're sort of waiting for that to happen, unfortunately. And the speed of the vehicles now is quite often exceeds 70 kilometres an hour, and it's supposed to be 40. Then we have Strathcona Street, which is supposed to be, what is it? I don't know, don't know what it is, but I know they race around the corner from Carr Street into Strathcona Street like that. I can't even see who's coming around the corner. That's beside the cafe on the corner, which and little kids go off and go off with their parents there as well. So it's a very dangerous place now. Used to be quite calm. I know there's 10 times more traffic on the road, or a lot more than that every day, but it's becoming very, very dangerous street. And there's of course, there's nowhere to park your car. So now, because I don't have a car anymore, which I lost in Leederville about 2 months ago in a slight accident, which wasn't my fault, but anyhow, I don't have a car anymore. So I now have to get taxis all the time. And so I have to order a taxi, which you get half-price ones when you get a pension, whatever. But they have trouble pulling in off the road to pick me up. And now we're getting, to me, they tell me, go across the road and get on. I say, come around here. They can't park. So it's becoming not very pleasant. And, of course, the footpaths too, that Mayor comments about, they're becoming bumpy in many places. Florence Street, Strathcona's still okay. Carr at certain places are becoming a bit bumpy with the slabs and the roots of the trees which poke under them. And my house now has this tree which is going to heaven. It's getting higher and higher. It hasn't been cut for I don't know how many years. And we keep getting promises they're going to at least give a bit of trimming to the top of it. But no, it never happens. Every year it goes by. I'm just hoping it will before the high branches of the tree go through the power lines getting across my fence and then hit my front veranda. And inside the room inside there is where I've got my computer and I don't have a fire, but nothing's happened yet. That's some complaints about that. The back lanes has improved, which we call in lane, which we've had so much difficulty over the years with cars speeding up and down that. This doesn't even have a speed limit. I put 8 kilometres an hour, but they don't. They just take through. And they now have semi-trailers going up and down the back lane, 5 metre wide lane. So it's becoming unpleasant. I don't even use my garage now because I don't have a car, and it's very difficult getting in and out. So I don't have that problem anymore, which is a blessing. And that's about the main things I'm thinking there. And the other things that came to my mind straight away is just what I must mention tonight. I think they're the main problems that we really have in our area. Some very nice neighbours, which is good. People in the street, and they let each other know what's going on, which helps too. And we're not supposed to have, but they have to do it now, fire trucks screaming up and down the streets when there's a fire somewhere. Well, they were told they weren't to use Carr Street, but they do because there's nowhere else for them to go anyhow. They can't get into traffic in Charles Street anyhow. So, but just if councillors don't know about some of these little issues that crop up from time to time. So that's about all I think I'll say tonight. And I've got something for the Mayor to give you after, little printout of the early start of Vincent's years, which different events happened. So I put them in a sheet in here.
Thank you. And by explanation, I did ask if I could have that. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. Yep, that's great. Are there any questions in relation to the annual report for anyone while you've got them here? Bearing in mind that if you don't want to ask them here and if something comes up later, you feel free to contact the council and we will get back to you. Okay. Well, if there's no further questions, we're now going to move on to general business. So this is general business is the opportunity for people to table their motions. So we have prepared a list to provide some information in response to queries raised ahead of the meeting and to give some order and move through those items efficiently. These have been listed in the order that they were received, as we did do a call out for motions in advance. Thank you to those who sent motions through ahead of the meeting, and copies of these are available. Can I please get an indication with a show of hands, please, who has a motion for tonight? 1, 2. Okay. All right. So we're going to go through the motions in the order. Well, actually, do you mind if we change the order so that we don't do it in the order we received? Only because I know that someone has grandmother duties. Is that acceptable to you? Okay. Sorry, if that's okay. Thank you. So the process is that we will read aloud the motion so everyone's clear about what's being put to the vote. I'm then going to call for a mover and a seconder, and ordinarily the mover will be the person who made the motion, and the motion must be seconded in order for the discussion to proceed. If it doesn't have a seconder, then the motion lapses and we'll move to the next motion. If the motion is moved and seconded, then the mover is to come forward to the microphone and may speak to the motion for 5 minutes. And after this, anyone else may come forward and speak on the motion for a maximum of 5 minutes. So the mover of a motion has the right of reply. And if there are no further speakers, then the mover may once again come forward and close the debate. So as the presiding member, I'm then going to ask for a vote on the motion, and this will be done by a show of hands. Each elector, including me, has 1 vote, and you do not have to vote. Okay, so I'll first ask for a show of hands of all those in favour, then I'm going to ask all those against, and the motion will be decided based on a simple majority. So what's going to happen is any motions that are passed this evening by this meeting are going to be tabled at the February council meeting, where council will then vote on how to proceed with the motions that have been raised. So before we commence, we have invited the community to attend this evening to ask any questions or simply give feedback. If you don't wish to table a motion but wanted to ask a simple question or make comments, then I also invite you to come forward. Now, we have said you want to come forward first, but I'm just conscious of the grandparent. So as the presiding member, if you don't mind. So I'm changing it up a bit in response to that. So the first motion, and I'll read this out, don't I? Yep. So the first motion that we have got here, is, so it's that one. It is that one. Yep. Yeah, that's what I thought. So the motion is, the Vincent Council urgently initiates scheme amendment to delete clause 61(1)(k) in Schedule 1 of the Vincent Local Planning Scheme number 2, and at the same time approves the advertising of local planning policy provisions to require development approval for the removal of large trees consistent with the WA Local Government Association policy template. Now, do we have a mover for this motion? Okay, yes, we have Linda. So, and do we have a seconder for this motion? Okay, excellent. So, Linda, would you like to? It's Betty. So, do you actually, you know the mover and seconder, don't you? So you got their names. Okay, Linda. So you have. So please say your name and also, and you've got 5 minutes.
Yep. My name is Linda Rawlings and I live at Pakenham Street in Mount Lawley. The City of Vincent can be justifiably proud of its efforts to promote the tree planting in the city through its own efforts in planting and maintaining verge trees and by supporting landholders with significant trees in various ways. However, the fact remains that Perth has the lowest tree canopy of any Australian capital city, 16%, and it continues to decline as mature trees that have taken decades to grow are cleared unnecessarily and without consequence. Last year's Browning event and the shot hole borer have also contributed to tree losses. This already disturbing data is from 2020, before any of the latter events. Other capital cities have more recent data, but the Department of Planning, Land and Housing has not released ours. City of Vincent has a particularly low tree canopy of around 13% compared to the metro average. Similar neighbouring local government areas of Cambridge, Perth and Subiaco have 20% or over. Walga, WA local government authority, states that 80% of canopy loss is occurring on private property. The state government has not set a target for urban tree canopy, unlike other state groups. Groups like the WA Tree Canopy Association have asked for a target of 30% canopy by 2040. This will not be achieved if the focus is solely on public land. The Minister has rejected the inclusion of protections of mature trees in local planning schemes. The City of Vincent Local Planning Scheme number 2 includes a clause which specifically removes any need for approvals for the removal of trees that are not included in City of Vincent Trees of Significance inventory, which is the clause 61. The protection of trees through such an inventory is burdensome and has proven to be largely ineffective in preventing loss of trees in favour of building development. Only a few other local planning schemes include a clause with similar intent to the City of Vincent's clause 61. Some have commenced the work of applying to have the offending clause deleted. It is a long process, including public advertising, leading to ministerial approval, and can take 12 to 18 months. A local planning policy does not need to be approved by the minister. So with this clause deleted, the City of Vincent is free to implement Walga's tree retention local planning policy. It is based on tree removal being works and therefore development as defined under Planning and Development Act. That may require development approval if a local planning policy has been adopted by the council that specifies the circumstances when tree removal isn't exempt from development. Examples like a tree with less than 8 metres, that's less than 8 metres high. This approach and the Walga tree retention local planning policy is supported by legal advice. This is about more than just ensuring our suburbs remain or become green leafy places for future generations. There is abundant scientific information about the negative impacts of heat islands on urban communities and the positive impact of large trees in creating safe havens and reducing heat stress, air conditioning costs, environmental degradation and climate change. I urge ratepayers to support this motion so that the City of Vincent continues to be a suitable place to build sustainable dwellings and areas for future generations. In presenting this rationale, I'd like to honour other members in the community of Wandoulia who have spent quite some time putting these words together. So thanks, team.
Okay, thank you. Would the seconder like to come up and speak to this? And if so, can they please state their name? Okay, right. If you don't have to come up and speak to it. Oh, you want to? Okay. You just get first dibs because you're the seconder.
I didn't mean to put up my hand.
And can you, for the minutes, can you please state your name?
Yes, my name is Elizabeth Parker and I live in 18 Pakenham Street, Mount Lawley. I won't take the whole 5 minutes. And I haven't got a prepared statement because that's what the team worked on. But I'd actually just like to take the time to thank Vincent Council, because I think many of the people here would be a wreck if you treated us like the state government treated us. And so for that, we're very grateful to each and every one of you, and particularly to you, Alison and Suzanne, for helping us in the way that you did. And so council is more than a human thing in just simply this proceedings here tonight. Sylvia, who was sitting beside me, said, I liked trees before the event, but I'm just obsessive. Or I don't know your words, Sylvia, but I think we all feel that. We have all just seen the value of what the tree canopy can do, not just for Vincent, not just for Western Australia, but the whole world. And so I urge you, if you can vote for our motion so that we can move forward on this. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak on this motion? Which doesn't mean to or for or against you. You can speak on it. Okay. So, all right. Well, in that case, I'm going to put the motion So all those in favour? Okay, yep. And against? Okay, that's carried. Thank you very much. Sorry? Yep, and that was unanimous. Thank you. So thank you very much. Okay, so now I'm going to move to motion 2. Okay, so the motion 2 is in the city's process of assessment and approval of new house developments, extensions and renovations, no gas appliances will be permitted. Existing gas appliances will be required to be removed and replaced with electric appliances or solar appliances such as solar hot water units with electric booster. Gas supply will be required to be disconnected. Do we have a mover for that? Yes, we do. Okay, and do I have a seconder? Okay, we have a seconder. So please come forward and speak to the motion. Thank you. Make sure you say your name for the minutes. And by the way, you don't have to say your address, just name.
My name is Mary Gray. I'm in Commonwealth Avenue, North Perth. So this issue is about gas. Action on climate change is needed by us residents and all levels of government. As gas is a fossil fuel and alternatives are readily available, there is a need to encourage and incentivise removal of gas appliances from households and small businesses in the City of Vincent. For many households, the only use of gas is for gas cooktops. These can be replaced by electric cooktops. Gas hot water systems can easily be changed to solar hot water systems with electric boosters. Gas-fired heaters can be replaced with reverse cycle air conditioners. Importantly, in-house gas appliances also emit pollutants, nitrogen dioxide and sulfur dioxide, and these have human health impacts. This is especially relevant for children and asthmatics. It is suggested that for new houses and renovations or extensions to houses and small business properties and facilities, the city requires that no gas appliances be permitted. Notably, this is actually being done in Victoria. It's actually a state government requirement in Victoria. Also, the city could provide incentives for householders and businesses to replace gas appliances with electric appliances and thus for gas supply to be disconnected. So this is some action on climate change that is much needed. So my questions are, will the city consider introducing mandatory requirements for no gas appliances in new houses and in home renovations and extensions? Similarly, will the city consider introducing requirements for no gas appliances in renovations and extensions of business premises? And thirdly, will the city consider introducing an incentive program for householders and businesses to remove all gas appliances? So the first motion, is for the first question, I guess. So, yeah.
Would the seconder like to speak to this motion? Okay. Sorry, we just need your name for the minutes, please. Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to speak on this motion? You just need to come forward.
Yeah. Simon Rudstead from Mount Hawthorn. Would just like to add that hot water heat pumps can be an energy efficient way to provide hot water, and that there's lots of good information on the Energy Efficiency Council's website.
I just might make a comment that I also have a heat pump and it is excellent. And I would like to agree with that sentiment. It's very, very efficient and particularly good if you have solar panels, as I do, because they're very effective. Sorry, that was a bit of a distraction. Also, if you have a little bird's nest near it, they really like it in summer because it pumps out cold air. So just I can confirm that too. That was my contribution to this debate. Would anyone else like to speak on this motion? Okay, mover, would you like to say anything in conclusion, or we just put it to the vote?
I agree with the last addition made. That's a good idea. Yeah, no, just happy for it to go to a vote.
Okay, all those in favour? Against? Okay, that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. So now I'm going to move to the next motion, which is going to sound very similar to the previous one, but it is different. In the city's process of assessment and approval of new or renovations of business premises, no gas appliances will be permitted. Existing gas appliances will be required to be removed and replaced with electric appliances. Gas supply will be required to be disconnected. Do we have a mover for that? Yes, we have a mover. Do we have a seconder? Yes, we have a seconder. Would the mover like to speak to the proposal, please?
Well, what I said before applies to this as well, so I don't need to repeat all that. But just separating out, householders from businesses, and I guess the council may well have slightly different processes and so forth. But yeah, so that's. Yeah, and it's something that businesses could readily be doing to show their support of, taking some action on climate change. So yeah, it's basically the same.
Okay, would the seconder like to speak to this? Would anyone else like to speak to this proposal? Yes, please come forward.
Hi, I'm Betty Bryant, and in general, I think it's a great idea. But I guess I would worry about the banning of businesses to use gas, because I know that if you are a chef and you want a very, very hot wok, for example, gas is the only thing that does it. I've got an induction stove at home, so I do know that it's very nice for average cooking. But I think for businesses, maybe encouragement might be better than banning. So encouragement to make the changes, encouragement to look at changes, rather than to have an outright ban. Just it.
Would anyone else like to speak on this proposal? You just need to come forward to the microphone if you wish to speak. And by explanation, it is actually being recorded and it's also being broadcast as well. So it's that people can't hear unless you have the microphone.
Understood. Thank you. Simon Rudstead again. On business use, I think there's some consideration for the time of use that, speaking to the gas use and the effectiveness of cooking is one element that we should give consideration to for businesses. And secondly, if we are replacing gas with electricity, it's important to consider the time of use of that electricity. So we all know that the sun doesn't shine at night, and people that may be going out for dinner, for example, to restaurants, if the use of electricity is very high in those periods from those businesses, the average emissions coming from the grid will actually be higher. And in peak periods in the Swiss here, we actually have a lot of high emissions intensity generation used in those periods, and it may actually be counterproductive to switch people to electricity. So I think we just need to get some analysis on that if we are to be in line with what is the most carbon effective approach.
Would anyone else like to speak on this proposal? Would the mover like to conclude the debate?
I guess with businesses, a lot of them, their activities during the day, and if you're talking about restaurants and so on and cafes in this region, most of them are morning and daytime, and they're closed by 2 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So that variation, which sounds reasonable, it is that should go into consideration. So maybe the variety of situations should be considered by the council.
Okay, so I'm going to put the proposal. So all those in favour? Against? Okay, so that's carried unanimously. And what this means, just by explanation, is this just means that this will come back to the council with a report for consideration. Okay, so that's what this means. Okay, so the next proposal is the city will develop and introduce a new program to provide incentives for householders to replace gas appliances with electric appliances and thus for gas supply to be cut off. Do we have a mover for that proposal? We do. Do we have a seconder? Do we have a seconder? You don't have to speak. So seconded by Councillor Hallett. Would the mover like to come forward and speak to the proposal, please?
Well, this is just helping towards, getting out of gas as a fuel and contributing to this whole issue of climate change, so that we all appreciate. So providing just, it's open what the incentives would be, but just to provide the opportunity for to incentivise householders to get rid of their gas, and people may wish to, drawing attention to the health aspects is a big issue that a lot of people are perhaps not aware of, but just some sort of incentive to encourage people to switch to electric cooktops and so forth. And any other, I don't know that many people have gas heating these days, but to get out of those, because certainly the nitrogen and sulfur oxides from heaters, gas heaters, is a health issue. It's not good. So that's all I need to say.
Okay. Would the seconder like to speak?
Thank you, and thank you for bringing these motions forward. I think it's timely, given that we're reviewing the Sustainable Environment Strategy and the Public Health Plan, that we can investigate what kind of options this could look like going forward. For those of you that are familiar with our Sustainable Environment Strategy currently, a lot of the focus is on internal organisational operations in terms of reducing our emissions, but there's going to be a refocus on working with community in the next one. So, it's timely for that. Thanks.
Would anyone else like to speak on this proposal? Okay.
Hi, Simon Rudstead. Again, would encourage the council in considering this motion that they look at the eastern states counterparts. The state governments in Victoria and New South Wales have run very long-term successful campaigns to encourage residential energy consumers to have appliance upgrades. The VEU and the Energy Savings Scheme are both very successful schemes, and they can help speak to getting that incentive dialed in correctly, so you're not overspending on incentives.
Would anyone else like to speak on this proposal? Would the mover like to wrap up the debate? Say anything further?
That last suggestion is a good idea. So it's leaving it, and yes, looking at another role model is always a good idea to help the council. Yeah. So I've just put it forward. I think we've got to collectively, as a community, move out of fossil fuels, and gas is a big one, but it has big health issues as well.
Okay, I'm going to put the proposal. So all those in favour? Against? Okay, that's carried unanimously. Thank you. Now, I did have another motion that was on the agenda that had been put forward. I just want to ask, is that still to be presented? Because, of course, it potentially has been superseded from the council decision from last night. Okay. So, all right, so that's not proceeding. Okay. All right, so thank you very much. And thank you very much for the proposal. And it's great to see that that the council was already dealing with your concern. So that's good. Okay then, so now we get to a point where if you wish to address the council to ask a simple question, please simple, or make comments, then I invite you to come forward and address the meeting. So would anyone here, any elected, like to address the meeting?
On Visca, Chelmsford Road. I'd just like to thank very much the initiative that was shown by the council on the Hyde Park Reference Group. I stood up at the February ratepayers meeting when it was announced what was going to happen, and I did recommend that some advisory body be formed, and in due consequence it did. We met on 6 occasions, and it was good expertise in that group itself. And so, once again, we were able to do something in discussion, also find out too the local government in conjunction with the DPIRD. So it wasn't as dire and extreme as what that initial announcement was. So I just want to thank you very much for taking that initiative, and it was a good working party. Thanks very much.
And I'd like to respond to that and say, and I'd like to thank you, and I'd like to thank the other members who volunteered their time and expertise to be part of that reference group. I know that the Parks and Gardening team and the administration have found that that what has come out of that has been extremely useful in terms of looking at the best way to not only look at tree replacement at Hyde Park, but also additional plantings that's going to be more in line with what the original vision for Hyde Park was and remains, and why it is so valued to the community. At the same time as we're trying to make sure that we are planting out trees and other species that are going to be resilient to climate change, resilient to shot hole borer, and hopefully be able to provide habitat as well for local plants. So it's quite a task to get those species and to get the location for those plantings right, but I think it's been invaluable for the council to be able to access that volunteer expertise, and I thank you for that. Would anyone else like to address the council? If there's nothing further, if there's no further motions or questions, I thank everyone who's in attendance and on the live stream, and I close the meeting at 2 minutes past 8.